You did not have a helicopter parent hovering over every decision. Nobody was scheduling your playdates or tracking your location or asking how you felt about things. You came home from school, let yourself in with the key around your neck, made yourself a snack, and figure out the rest on your own. And nobody thought anything of it. That was just Tuesday. If that sounds like your childhood, what it did to your brain is more significant than anyone ever told you. Generation X. Born roughly between 1965 and 1980. Sandwiched between a massive cultural conversation about boomers and millennials, largely ignored by both. And that invisibility is actually one of the most psychologically interesting things about you. You grew up being overlooked, and you became adults who are surprisingly comfortable being overlooked, not because you have low self-worth, because you genuinely stopped needing the validation that other generations seem to require constantly. Here is where the psychology gets interesting. Developmental psychologist Diana Baumrind spent decades studying parenting styles and their long-term effects on children. The predominant parenting style of the 1970s and early 1980s, the era when Gen X was growing up, leaned heavily toward what researchers call authoritarian or permissive detached. Translation. Parents were either strict rule setters who did not explain themselves or largely absent and uninvolved. Either way, the outcome was the same. You learned to solve problems without asking for help. You learned to manage disappointment without anyone processing it with you. You learned that waiting for someone to rescue you was a losing strategy, so you stopped waiting. Psychologists call this self-efficacy, the deep internal belief that you are capable of handling what comes at you. And research consistently shows that Gen X scores unusually high in this area. Not because life handed you everything, precisely because it did not. Every afternoon you spent entertaining yourself, every problem you solved alone, every time you navigated something difficult without adult guidance, your brain was quietly building something, a belief that you could figure things out. That belief became the foundation of how you think about almost everything. But there's another side to this that researchers find fascinating and rarely discuss. That same independence created a generation of people who struggle profoundly with asking for help even when they desperately need it. Clinical psychologist Jeffrey Arnett, who has studied generational psychology extensively, found that Gen X adults show significantly higher rates of self-reliance to the point of isolation. You were trained so thoroughly to handle things alone that accepting support can feel genuinely uncomfortable, not weakness, unfamiliarity. There is a significant difference. You are not incapable of receiving help. You simply never practiced it because nobody was around to offer it. Then there is what happened in your early adulthood. You came of age during a period of significant cultural disillusionment. The institutions your parents trusted, government, corporations, traditional marriage, organized religion, were visibly crumbling or revealing themselves as unreliable. Watergate, corporate downsizing, the AIDS crisis, the crack epidemic. You watched the structures that were supposed to be stable prove themselves unstable. And your brain drew a very logical conclusion. Do not put too much faith in systems. Rely on yourself. Stay skeptical. Keep your expectations realistic. This is why Gen X has always had a reputation for irony and cynicism. But psychologists see something more precise than cynicism. They see adaptive realism. A generation that adjusted its worldview to match the evidence it was actually given. And here is what makes Gen X psychologically unique in a way that is genuinely worth understanding. You are perhaps the last generation that knows what sustained boredom feels like. Real boredom. The kind where there is nothing to do and no device to fill the silence, and you have to sit with your own thoughts until something emerges. Research on creativity consistently shows that boredom is not the enemy of productivity. It is one of its most important preconditions. The brain in a state of undistracted rest begins to make connections it cannot make when constantly stimulated. Every hour you spent staring at the ceiling or wandering the neighborhood or making something out of nothing was your brain developing a capacity for independent thought that is increasingly rare. You are not the forgotten generation. You are the generation that learned something the rest of us are still trying to figure out. How to exist without constant external input. How to trust yourself when no one else was available to trust. How to keep going when the systems around you fail. That was never nothing. That was everything. If this resonated with you, leave a comment below. Subscribe to InnerFeels for more videos that finally explain the psychology behind the generations and the people who lived through them.